This is my favorite kind of a crowd. We got builders, dreamers, and people who chose to solve hard problems. Today, my talk is all about solving hard problems, how Chainlink decided to take every hard problem, what kind of problems, what products we built, what solution that we built that moved our industry forward, and how our users are winning because of that. Starting from our first white paper to all the amazing things that we announced this week, Chainlink Foundation was built on a one belief that solving hard problems will define our future. Because once you do that, you're not only moving the company forward, you're moving the entire industry forward. All right, so let's look into what hard problems we chose to solve, how the journey started, and we'll try and walk you through one of them, one at a time, reasoning behind it, and how we went about solving them. All right, four problems, really clear, needed for our industry to grow forward: data and interop. Getting data on chain in a reliable, secure, fast way is really, really hard. If you were in the industry for a long time, you will realize a single point of failure. Getting data from one API, one provider, was not the way to go. Getting two systems that are really different to talk to each other, really hard problem. Compliance, you cannot move capital without having compliance travel with it. Privacy and approve. You heard from Sergey, keep things secret, but prove it. Well, that's cute. That's really hard, right? Keep it in secret, but prove me, show me the proof. Distribution and connectivity. As you add more chains, more assets, the fragmentation is really, really real. Moving assets from one chain to another, integrating to others, really, really difficult problem. Everybody has a different protocols, different way of working with them. Those systems are fragmented, really hard problem to solve. Right, let's start with the data problem, right? Before there was DeFi or tokenization, there was one really hard problem that had to be solved. How do you get the data, a real world data, onto chain in a reliable, secure, and a decentralized way? That was the problem, that was the hard problem that started everything for Chainlink, right? We created with the white paper. That white paper did not only solve the problem for us, but it created a category of a decentralized oracles, and everybody else followed. That was the hard problem that started everything. We went through multiple layers. If you were in the industry and following Chainlink, you will know there was an on-chain consensus, couple versions of them. Then the OCR came, second version, third version, we kept on iterating and solving harder problems on that side of the world. Data feeds came in, data streams, the smart data. We did not stop innovating across the board. That one single innovation ignited the DeFi. It brought data on-chain that created real market. We work with our partners like Aave, Compound, GMX, Camino, you name it, right, to build the ecosystem and industry forward. That was a really hard problem that we had to solve with the data. That's how we got started. That is our mode. That is what Chainlink's known for. As you fast forward 7+ years, right now, Chainlink just didn't join DeFi, right? I like to call it, we defined it. Today, about 70% of the DeFi is ran on Chainlink. That's 2/3 of a DeFi running on Chainlink. That is not a market share, that is market infrastructure. It is that powerful. The financial institutes, they saw the DeFi that has been running on Chainlink, that has this reliable security for last 7 years, securing hundreds of billions of dollars, right, that earned us trust of a user. They decided if it can power DeFi, it can definitely power financial markets. Deutsche Börse, S&P Global, TradeWeb, they all decided to bring the data on chain so we can tokenize. Money market funds, bonds, private credits, equity, you name it, right? That was the second wave on the data side that we end up seeing. The third one is even bigger. The governments. Recently, US Commerce Department decided to publish government data on chain using Chainlink. Now that is big. As you can see, over the years, we've been powering protocols, then market, now nations. That is what winning looks like. None of that would have been possible without solving that one really hard problem. Right, data was the one that we kept on solving. Listen, it's not an easy problem. We still work really hard to come up with the creative ways and solutions to make it even more better and make that system more resilient, more powerful, so the markets can function. When we decided to build Introp, CCIP, that was, back in the day, Introp was the weakest link in the DeFi side. You would transfer a token, and you keep your fingers crossed that hopefully it shows up on the other side. There was news every now and then around bridge hacks, more and more chain coming up, fragmentation of liquidity, right? All kinds of problems that were coming in. When we decided to solve that problem on Introp with CCIP, we took a really hard stand that we will not take any shortcuts. We will go with the defense in debt, security, reliability, and a decentralization is going to be at the center of everything that we do. Because we truly believe in solving a fundamentally hard problems, right? It is very tempting in our industry to take a shortcut, to have a smaller win, do things in a different way just to get by. But that was a stand that we took. We wanted to solve the fundamental problems across the board with the Introp product that we built. Today, I like to call CCIP, when people ask me to explain what CCIP is, it's like a Fort Knox of Introp, right? It's the most secure way to transfer value, token, and a message across the bridge. And it didn't come that easy, right? When we solved those hard problems, took a step back, we helped the industry grow forward. Today, CCIP is powering more than 70 plus blockchains. The momentum is bigger than ever. We got Solana, we got Aptos. Last week, we announced partnership with Ton, Stellar, Canton. The momentum is real, right? Once you solve the hard problem, hitting the scale is really, really easy, right? We're winning for real. We're the biggest momentum for the product life that we had in a very, very long time. So very proud of the work the team's done on that side of the world. You heard from Sergey. I was debating whether I should name AWS or not. You know, so some of you know my background. But you know, it's always fun to take a dig at the old rivals. But yeah, when the AWS went down, essentially a larger cloud went down, the entire internet got cold, right? There were a few protocols in the DeFi infrastructure who took a bet on a centralized cloud, were down for a couple of hours. Chainlink wasn't. And that wasn't luck, right? That's an architecture. That's a decentralization at the heart of how systems work, right? This is why it's a great proof why decentralization wins. And you know, this conference is all about, Chainlink, right? So obviously we talk about how Chainlink was up and whatnot, but I want to make a shout out to the team across our industry who is deciding to solve hard problems, making things decentralized, paying the debt. We were not the only ones that were up. There were a lot of people in our industry that were decentralized, running up, serving their clients, making sure the markets are working. A big shout out to everybody in the industries working hard to solve hard problems. Thank you very much. It wouldn't be possible without you. Because when we solve this problem, right, we assume the clouds will fail, but the markets should never be failing, right? And that's the core of decentralization. Big believer. Solve the hard problems, the liquidity will follow, right? Liquidity will always follow security, compliance, privacy, and doing the right things. Let's be in it for the long run. All right, let's see how some of our users who are winning making a bet on CCIP, right? It's the power of CCIP. I want to touch on them briefly. Starting with Maple, really favorite use case. They have a stablecoin suit up USDC. They provide a great yield. They wanted to essentially make the yield accessible from anywhere. You got USDC on Solana. Syrup is minted on ETH with a single transfer with a programmable token transfer feature. They were sending value and a message. Send USDC from Solana to ETH, get the syrup back into your wallet in a one single transaction, right? That's the power of that. Aave, our favorite partner, right? They wanted to make sure Go is multi-chain without giving up control, the custom token pools. They wanted to make sure they have a rate limiting, they have full ownership of the contract, and the rules that they control. A power of a customization on that side. And Lombard, again, they wanted to make sure every transfer is compliant before a token is printed on the destination chain. So compliance first. They essentially use our attestation API off-chain to initiate and confirm that every transfer meets a compliance requirement before anything is minted. Really, really powerful use cases would not be possible without CCIP. All right, let's step back a little, right? We solved the data problem, we solved the intra problem. You heard about seeing how our users are customizing the product to slowly go towards compliance. You know, compliance is one of those words, right, that empties the room faster than a free food. You know, compliance. See, nobody's moving, that's great. This is why you're my favorite crowd. You're here to solve really, really hard problems. But listen, with compliance, the hardest part was understanding what is compliance. It's very, very difficult. Every country has a different rules, different jurisdiction. Getting compliance on a multi-asset, multi-chain, that's a really hard topic. Connecting your existing off-chain systems to on-chain, that is a really hard topic. Even if you figure everything out, proving that you're compliant, that's even more harder. And if you have to bring your institutional liquidity on-chain and proving then that you're really compliant, that's even harder, right? It's a really hard problem to solve on the compliance side. So if you make compliance an afterthought, you're not gonna win in this market, right? This is also a really, really hard problem to solve. Let me walk you through how we went about solving this problem. I am very proud of the logo wall that you guys see here, right? These are all the users of Chainlink that are using and piloting with compliance product, automated compliance engine. It didn't happen overnight. Let me walk you through how we worked through that, right? We sat down with the banks, the FMIs, the regulators, the RW issuers, the DeFi teams, the people solving the compliance problem independently. We learned what issues they were trying to solve. We did not build the product for them, we built the product with them. Right? When you spoke with them, the first thing that comes out, like, well, identity, all different sources. I cannot work with a one single identity provider. I have 10 different places to work with. Policies, they're complicated, right? There's some on-chain, there's some off-chain policies. You need a different way of executing them, different orders, different country perspective, in certain way. Really hard problem. The third one was monitoring and reporting. Everybody had invested heavily into their existing monitoring reporting. They wanted to carry the stack forward versus get something out of box. So when we sat down, we understood that compliance is not a one single problem. There are thousands of different variations. And when you have to solve something like that, you go back to the first principle of making things composable and modular. That's exactly what we're trying to do with ACE. We can work with any identity provider, plug and play, have a proof on chain that a counterparty can validate. Yes, that's the person that you're working with. The policy engine, where you can bring in your own policy, some out-of-box policies, any country, any jurisdiction, we can assign and tell us which order you want to execute those policies before the transfer happens, during the transfer, after the transfer, you name it, right? And then monitoring and reporting is always the critical part. So we plug and play with all kinds of monitoring and reporting providers in the ecosystem and work with that, right? So that was a hard problem that we had to solve. But when we solved with them, we found the best product market fit in the recent history of Chainlink. Today, compliance is not a bad word. Like, every time you talk to people about this topic, the next question that I hear, tell me more. Tell me more. How can I use this? That's the power of this product. Really excited about this product. Biggest product market fit, like I said, in the last few years in a Chainlink history. All right, let's talk about how one of the pilots using compliance to solve a really critical problem. This is my favorite use case, and I'll tell you in a little bit why. Right? You know, think about a scenario. A regulator wants to manage and see the entire stablecoin life cycle end-to-end real time. Not after some, news hits, few months after some bad thing happened. whatnot. That was the challenge for the Bermuda Monetary Authority. Chainlink won that RFP. We went in and brought in partners to work with us. Apex, Blueprint, Hacken. Apex was the stablecoin issuer. Blueprint was validating the identity of every single issuer. And then Hacken was providing a real-time analytics to make sure there are no bad actors before any transfer that happened and things along those lines. None of this would have been possible without ACE being at the center of the equation. ACE essentially brought all these partners in an ecosystem together. Before you print any stablecoin, ACE will call the proof of reserve to make sure there are enough reserves. It'll work with the Blueprint to make sure the identity of the issuer is meeting the requirements. And then the policies with the Hacken tells to make sure the wallet transfer that are happening that are not with the bad actors and things along those lines in real time before the transfer executed. That is critical, before, because that is the hardest part to solve right now, right? A lot of the problems that we see and we find out is afterwards, and it takes days and days to solve after the side of the world, right? So, but none of that would have been possible. The reason this slide is very, very favorite to me, because it shows the power of a Chainlink platform. All of my products that we build are used in solving this solution. You got CRE, you got ACE, you got data with the proof of reserve, you got CCIP to make the transfer. But you know what's even more powerful? It is not a one-vendor shop. We're not going out and saying Chainlink is providing you everything that you need. We're working with the partners in our ecosystem who are working hard to solve a specific problem. Apex, Blueprint, Hacken, you name it, right? Essentially, what we are doing here is bringing the partners together. We're staying true to what Chainlink is, net neutrality, providing a way and infrastructure for all of us to come together to solve a really hard problem, right? This is just not a pilot. This is essentially a preview to the future. Very proud of this use case. All right, let's talk about privacy. Chainlink confidential compute. You heard from Sergey. Really, really excited topic, right? This is one of the most amazing innovations that we've seen in a long time as well. Technically, really hard problem, right? You know, when you talk about solving difficult problems, this is one of them. You know, privacy on a public chain. You know, when you talk about that concept, the first response is, are you kidding me, right? I mean, this whole concept of public chain, how do you bring the privacy on it, is hard. But if you look back, right, we solved the scale problem, we solved the decentralization problem, we solved security, we solved compliance. Privacy is the next biggest unlock for our industry to grow really, really fast. It's very obvious to most of us that privacy opens up a new kind of RWAs, right? That were not possible before without privacy. The T-bills, the private credits, on the commodity side, real estate, you name it, that's all possible, that's very visible. They're visible RWA assets. But what privacy also does, that it enables those complex financial instruments that are not really RWA, that are needed for the entire system to work effectively, right? Calculating margin requirements, the corporate actions, model portfolio data distribution, these are problems of today. Privacy unlocks these problems that allows us to move all these RWAs on-chain in a right way and recreate the system that is more efficient and effective for all of us. All right, so I'm gonna try and walk you through how the system works and try and simplify it. Right now, I grew up, I have two boys, you know, and I grew up with them asking me this question, you know, Daddy, what do you do for a living? You know, being a technologist, it's a really hard question to answer because they need to be able to explain to their friends. So when I heard about privacy, I was jumping up and down, and obviously, you know, you get a question, Daddy, what is this? What do you do for a living? And I'll try and explain this to my son, what we're trying to do here. So let me take a stab, right? Okay? It's actually very simple. How does it work? You want to do a private calculation, you give us your security key. We're going to break that down into multiple pieces. Few people have them, but nobody knows who all has them. There is no way for anybody else to construct the key together to run the execution. The execution happens inside a secret chamber. The only thing that call those 6 different keys is a secret chamber. When the keys come in, they assemble together, they do the calculation, and then we destroy the chamber. Boom, it's gone. But There's enough traces and a proof written on-chain and in different places where the counterparty, if they choose to, can exactly figure out what happened without ever leaking your PII. That's the system that we built. This is why this innovation is so critical. Yeah, it sounds like a sci-fi movie, right? I told you, we like to make things really simple. Yeah, that's what we do. But trust me, this shit's complicated. It's not that simple. If you want to learn more, our head of research is going to talk about this in detail and really geek it out tomorrow. I really invite you all to go see and talk about it and learn more there too. But in short, what is happening here is the three unique systems, right? You got a hardware in form of a TE today. It can be FHE. It can be anything else. It keeps the innovation going. Then you got cryptographic proofs with DKG and things along those lines. You got decentralization. Our industry has been solving these problems in pockets, individually, on the privacy side. And you have solutions from one single vendor. They will ask you, but you have to use my product, but you have to use that. Nobody doing it in a net neutrality way. Three different innovations happening in a different place. This is the first time in the history of our industry, Chainlink is actually bringing all these three different entities together and figured out a way to make the entire transaction private. That is that innovation. That is why this is powerful, because any of these three parts of the system can be compromised, but what is guaranteed that your data will still remain private and will be provable. And that's that innovation. That's why it is really complicated. I try to make it really simple, like a movie scene, but that's exactly what it is. That is exciting, right? And it's gonna solve a lot of problems, right? Let's talk about one of them, the market portfolio data. In 2025, this should never be a problem. Right? For those who know what market portfolio data distribution is, it's essentially a recipe to investment, right? The asset manager has the secret sauce, they give it to the wealth platform, the wealth managers take it and do a bunch of stuff with it. You know how they send it today? Emails, flat files. Nobody knows which version to use, no reconciliation. What was the last thing that happened? Is it safe? Who saw it? Nobody knows that. It's a $3 trillion industry and growing faster. Hundreds of millions are spent in inefficiencies, right? Imagine bringing this data on-chain in a privacy secure way where only the right counterparty can have access to it. Everything is attested, verifiable. Anybody can see who had access to it and how it did. You remove the entire inefficiency in the system, process, people, waste of capital. And let's be honest, right? Who doesn't want to do that? But that's the power. That's the power of the privacy that is going to unlock. It's not about the obvious RWAs. These complex financial instruments, they cannot be on-chain without this innovation. This is why I'm really excited. All right, let's bring it home, right? You heard from Sergey about CRE, our not next, but a really big innovation that we're really excited about. Where does all the things that we talked about runs? ACE, privacy, it all runs on CRE, right? We run our products on our own platform that we give it to you all to build on it. And that's something we're really proud of. Why did we build CRE? As you start thinking about how the industry grew, more and more chains came in, more and more different protocols came in, different way of accessing data. Like if today you have to read and write to Solana, to TON, to EVM, different constructs, different programming language, different finality, it's confusing, right? You're gonna end up with so many different smart contracts to work with. On-chain compute, off-chain compute. You wanna have your legacy system connect to the on-chain systems, different triggers. All these things are nothing but a kind of a plumbing that you have to spend your time and energy before you actually go about solving a real problem for your end user. What CRE does, it takes that complexity away from you. It makes reading and writing to chain, it's just like reading and writing. Don't worry about which chain you're reading to. Don't worry about which chain you're writing to. You just read and write. You trigger a workflow. You do on-chain compute, you off-chain compute. A basic primitive. We abstract the complexity away so you can focus on writing really amazing problems or solving really amazing problems for your end users, okay? We're winning with CRE. There's tons of use cases. We got banks, EFMIs, Web 2, Web 3, DeFi. Everybody's excited, building on top of the platform. Some of the use cases that you see out here, the multi-chain token manager, the bringing your own data, stablecoin mint, DVP, DTA, all of these at one point used to be a special project or a custom project. Today, they're all workflows, run on CRE. Really simple, right? And that's the power. Let's talk about three of those use cases that are favorite to me. One of them is Clint, right? Really, really innovating company in DeFi. They launched a new product called Railnet. What are they doing? They're allowing the users to create their own yield strategy. Any RWA, stablecoin, different complexity of a product or whatnot, and then build your own yield strategy portfolio and have fun. On paper, sounds really simple, but when you deal with all these complex assets on different chains and you have to manage all the different states and offchain compute and what does it mean to the strategy, is a nightmare. Now try and building that, all the plumbing yourself before you get to the core part that is the strategy. CRE made that possible, right? It does the state management and all the stuff, the plumbing that you needed was really, really simple. It reduced the time of development from months and months to days. Bancoiner, they work with their other partners in the different banks around the world, different jurisdiction, different financial systems, different currencies to settle a cross-trade settlement for a small, medium businesses, right? It's essentially a trade settlement. Without that, these small, medium business users will never have access to this international market, to having those settlements run, right? To have the access to the commodity to be sold onto different parts. All they had to do was to just plug in and bring their own off-chain trade finance system on CRE. CRE made it happen. Finally, Mastercard with the swapper, with the 3.5 billion users wanting to buy token on Uniswap, right? It's just like how the industry is moving forward in a way. You can buy them using your credit card, just like how you buy your Starbucks coffee, right? Really simple. The point is, listen, three very different use cases, three very different goals for the user, but one common thread, which is CRE turned the complexity into a simple orchestration. And they focused on writing what matters to them and solving those problems. Very powerful. All right. Finally, to bring it all together, in a way, financial markets are forward-looking. We all know that, right? DeFi has been innovating like crazy. Like, they're solving today's financial market problems by coming up with innovating solutions. Who would have thought that, individual or retail will be able to participate into providing liquidity into, creating markets, right? And things along those lines, having a different kind of a leverage put in the system. None of these things that we ever had access traditionally. They are innovating really, really fast. They're the innovation engine of our industry. They're making new assets. They're making them more composable. They're providing utility, like you heard, that allows them to make a lot of money too, which is a great thing, right? In a DeFi side. DeFi is actually a true example of why hard problems are worth solving. Institutions are seeing that, right? They're seeing that tokenization is solving some real problems they've been facing challenges with, real-time settlements, transparency, programmable utility to the assets. If an asset's off-chain has a better way to earn a different performance on-chain, might as well go after that, right? And that's the opportunity that they are seeing in a way too. So for us to unlock the next phase of a growth for our industry, let's be honest, let's take a while of a little bit, right? We're innovating like crazy for the last 7 years. We come up with these amazing instruments to do great things and whatnot, but there's one single problem across the industry. That's liquidity. As you fragment more and more, as you do more and more applications and whatnot, everybody is looking for liquidity, right? And that problem has to be solved. But the good part is, in the absence of a lower liquidity, we're building products with amazing resilience as an industry, not just Chainlink, amazing resilience. So when the liquidity shows up, the system should work like a clockwork, right? But the problem of bringing that aspect, right? What institutions want, what DeFi wants, the liquidity has to flow in both directions. The institutional asset has to come on chain. The innovations that DeFi is making has to go to the billions out there in the world. This is our opportunity. Chainlink sits right at the center of this paradigm shift in the new financial market that we're seeing. In a single world, with all these innovations, what we're doing is we're unlocking capital flow. My ask to all of us in this industry, working harder to move us forward together, keep on doing the hard work. We're sitting in the middle. making sure we bring the right liquidity on-chain so all of us can succeed from this point on out, right? This is the powerful state that we find ourselves in, and we do not take this for granted or easy. All right, we're not done yet. I want to talk about one final vision. You know, it wouldn't be a product talk if I don't talk about the vision and where we headed and why I am so excited about CRE and what it can bring. All right, let's imagine what happens next, right? You get more and more CRE developers writing workflows. Those workflows add to CRE network. Today, the workflows are private. Tomorrow, they will be public. It can be semi-public or semi-private. What it does, it allows the others in the user ecosystem to consume that workflow, call it, pay for it, and then create and solve another problem. Now that's fascinating. Once that happens, CRE allows them to write and build those on-chain applications really quick by taking the complexity away. That creates a new dev, new workflow. You see how the cycle adds. As you start solving those amazing problems using workflow, workflow becomes a public utility that you can call, get paid for. That's an incentive to keep on innovating on that side. And that makes this platform really, really powerful, right? This is how we move product from the platform and a platform to an ecosystem that runs by itself. But listen, we cannot do it ourselves. I need each of you, the builders, the dreamers, the hard problem solvers in this room, to help build together and have this industry move forward, because I truly believe this is a EVM-like moment that we are facing in front of us. This is going to help us move our industry forward faster than anybody has ever imagined, right? Once these workflows become public utility, you solve the problem once. And also, don't forget, all these users that we're onboarding onto our platform. We talked about Mastercard with the 3.5 billion users, JP Morgan with their clients and whatnot. As they all work on this platform, you build on top of it, guess what happens? You have access to that distribution. You have to figure out just a way to do the right partnership with the right players. The hardest part is solved. You focus on writing technology, you're on a platform where you have access to this amazing distribution, whether it's B2B, B2C, doesn't really matter. That is the vision, and that is what something I'm really, really excited about. All right, I'm gonna end the talk in a positive note. You know, I want to make sure I walk you through this amazing power of our platform. We're gonna have 2 live demos. One showcasing the power of platform CRE. Zubin's gonna come in and show you how to solve a prediction market on CRE live, right? Again, it's doing a live demo is risky, but I got a team that can pull it off. And the second demo is about showing you the vision that I just explained live. We partner with Coinbase using the X402 API to pay to the workflow owner to kick off the workflow, and that's a part of the raffle that you all scan at the start of the talk. So with that, before I hand it off to him, this is all from me. Thank you very much. I hope you all have amazing SmartCon. Let's stay connected and see how we can solve hard problems, all right? Take it away, Zubin.
Hello again, everybody. And thanks to Apurva. Give it up for Apurva, folks. That was a fantastic vision painted for CRE and making elegant solutions by solving really hard problems. So what I'm going to try and do for you today is give you a quick demo of something we built in collaboration with Google, just to help you understand what CRE does. Now, I'm going to use the context of a prediction market. And for those of you who aren't familiar with the prediction market, it's basically an on-chain it's a smart contract where people place their positions, like do they believe a future event is going to go this way or that way. Think of it as this is the proposition, do you agree, yes or no? And so you have both sides of the marketplace. And I do have a confession to make. I grew up in the 80s and 90s being a massive Michael Jordan fan, so I'm a bit of a Bulls fan, and I looked for a recent event. Yep, wait till you see what happened. But on the 31st, there was a Knicks versus Bulls match. And I created a prediction market around that. And this is the smart contract up here. And I created the market saying, hey, are the Bulls going to beat the Knicks? Now, I apologize to all the New Yorkers here. Nothing against the Knicks. I've just been a Bulls fan, for years and years and years. And of course, because it's a prediction market, we need to simulate what happened. So I took a past event because we know what the result is. And so now that we know that the game happened on the 31st, we know the result, etc. So you can see all this happen. So let me walk you through what you're actually going to see. So this is what a CRE workflow looks like. And I apologize for those of you who aren't technical. This may be a bit difficult for you to fully follow, but I'll try and keep it as digestible for you as I can. But at the core of CRE workflows, right, this is a single workflow. It's 100 lines, and it does a lot. It does a lot. It has a trigger. CRE has a bunch of triggers. This one's a log trigger, which means the moment my smart contract emanates an event, CRE will automatically pick it up. And then it does a handler on that. It does a bunch of actions, which is your business logic, right? That's what happens in response to the trigger. And what does this one do? Well, this one listens to an event called settlement requested, which is someone says, okay, this event's happened, let's settle the market, and then it does a bunch of things. It decodes that event log, it sends it to Gemini, right? Gemini AI, and say, use grounding, which is a Google feature on their AI, and confirm whether or not this event happened and give us the data. And then it settles the market. So far we've done two things. We've done an HTTP request, CRE's orchestrated it, asked Gemini, got the response, used that response to do an on-chain write, to update the state of the smart contract with the response and the result. And then, just for extra redundancy, it also puts it into a Google Firestore database with more data in case you ever want to look at that. And right now, you'll see my front end has nothing, and so I'm not faking this. But we'll get to that in a moment. So that's pretty much what a workflow does. And so the first thing we want to try and do is try and settle the market. So I'm just going to copy this command here. I've created a market ID number 27, so I'm just going to update that. Okay, so when I run this command, I'm going to call this smart contract and say, hey, can you settle the market, which means trigger CRE. Now, in the real world, if I deployed my workflow to CRE, you wouldn't see any of this because it's all orchestrated and automatic and it just happens, right? For the purpose of the demo, I've had to break it down into steps and simulate it for you. But this is what will happen right now if you were to deploy a workflow. Okay, so I'm going to call this, I'm going to request settlement. Give it a moment, it's going to speak to the blockchain, it's going to have the RPC request, and then what we're expecting to see at the end of this is a confirmation transaction with a hash. And there it is. There's the hash. Okay, so I'm just going to copy that. Let's go over here. I'm going to refresh the Block Explorer, and we should see this hash show up here at the bottom in a couple of seconds, right? Takes a bit of time because of the latency. Let's keep refreshing. There we go, 23 seconds ago. You see that? And just to show you I'm not kidding, I'm going to paste. There you go. That's the same transaction hash. Now let's inspect what happened to this transaction hash. Let's look at the logs and we see, oh, here it goes. It emitted this event called settlement requested. It had the market ID, which is 27, and here's the market question that both sides are playing, okay, on the prediction market. Let's go back to the contract for a second. Okay, so now I'm going to copy that hash again just for security's sake, for safety's sake. And I am now going to simulate the CRE workflow. Okay, so this command here is CRE workflow simulate. The CRE comes with a very powerful command line tool that handles all this abstraction for you and also lets you simulate locally. But interestingly, you can do a local simulation and have on-chain action. And that's why you have this broadcast flag right at the very end here, right? So we're going to do a local simulation of CRE, of your workflow, of this workflow, this main.ts file that I have here. That's going to get simulated locally, but there is going to be an on-chain write, so I can show you all that in a moment. Okay, here we go. Demo gods, be good to me. Okay, now it's asking for the transaction hash. Why? Normally, it would just have picked up the event, but because we're simulating, I'm giving it the, not that one, I'm giving it the transaction hash that we just saw a moment ago, and saying, well, that's where the event's coming from. It's going to say, what's the event log? That's 0, because it was just a single event. Now let's take a look at what's happening here. It said, oh, okay, got it. That's the event name, settlement requested. It's the market ID 27. The question was, will the Bulls beat the Knicks on 31st October? Sent the data to Gemini. Gemini's response was, yeah, well, it's a past event, so we know, it was able to settle the market with a confidence score of 10,000, which is the highest. And then it's going to write all this on-chain. Now, let me just stop here for a second and remind you again that this one workflow has done a number of things. It's been triggered by an on-chain event. It's made an HTTP request to Gemini. It's retrieved the data, submitted it with consensus back to your smart contract, so it stored it on-chain, and then sent all that data and the metadata off to Firestore to save it there. And now if you look, I'm just going to copy that transaction hash, and I'll show you that in a moment. But if you look back in our contract, let me refresh this page. If I look at the events, I'm going to see here a report call on my contract. This is CRE submitting all the data back right here, right? So if I look at that transaction, I look at the logs, you will see that the settlement response from CRE to my smart contract had market ID 27, which is what it was. The status is now that it's closed and it's been resolved, and outcome is 2. 1 is no, 2 is yes, which is the outcome of the market, which is what we saw here. Yeah? Yes is 2, and that's what we see here. Back on my contract. And now let's take a look at GCP Firestore, right? If I refresh that, this has got all the data there, including all the grounding metadata. So if anyone wants to verify, they can do that. And if I search for my hash here, you will see even that's been stored here. So you know I'm not kidding. You know I'm not faking this. This just happened. And here on my front end, if I want, I'll refresh it, and you will see the market, and you'll see that the hash is the same one, and you'll see that it's 11th of November. 4th of November. Sorry, I'm Aussie, so I have it the other way around. 4th of November at 2:25, which is 2 minutes ago. Status code, there's the question, there's the response. So all of this is a way we solved a hard problem by making it as simple and accessible to you guys. Very powerful composability, orchestration, and automation through what is basically a 100-line workflow file that does all this on-chain and off-chain activity. Okay, so hope you enjoy that. With that, let me hand it over to Harry.
Okay, I know we're running a bit late, so I'm going to get straight into it. So we're going to do something now that we've never done before here at SmartCon. And hopefully some of you filled out the QR code and answered the question that we asked, which is, what would you build with CRE? Well, we're going to take the 3 best responses, and we're going to give these people 2 tickets to SmartCon each, next year's SmartCon. And we're going to do that live on stage right now. So, but we're not going to do it ourselves. We're going to get an AI agent to do the work for us. So you heard Apurva say just before, talking about this future vision of a CRE workflow network. Well, we decided to make that real, and we've built a giveaway workflow that we're going to run today. And thanks to our friends at Coinbase and the X402 protocol, we have monetized it so that any developer or AI agent can use our workflow. For those who don't know, X402 enables programmatic payments over HTTP. All right, are you ready, SmartCon? Let's go. So what's happening here is the AI agent has been scoring each of your responses as they come in, and it is taking the top 3 scores, and it's going to send them to CRE. And the way it does that is we have an X402 gateway set up that is basically a way to accept X402 payments, and that gateway is going to take the payment from the AI agent and the 3 results, and it's going to trigger the CRE workflow. The CRE workflow will validate the responses, and then it will send them on chain where we can see them on the UI. Now, we've kept the validation pretty light, but you can imagine some of the stuff you may do. Maybe you want to filter based on people that are here in person, so you want them to have a ticket to this year's SmartCon. All right, let's see the results. Boom. All right. AI RWA oracles. Building AI-powered RWA value oracles. Awesome. Love that one. Second winner, hybrid accounting orchestrator. Congratulations. Third one, trusted 3D, oh, this one's my favorite, trusted 3D manufacturing. Thank you to everyone who submitted responses, and congratulations to the winners. You'll be receiving an email today. So let's quickly take a look at the X402 payment here. You can see that was made from the agent to us as the workflow owners. In addition to this, let's take a look on chain. And we should be able to see the responses reflected here as well. And if we take a look at the CRE workflow, all right, it's not cached or something. But the CRE workflow has completed and we have the responses on chain. So this is a glimpse of the future where CRE workflows act as these kind of composable utilities for other ecosystem participants to use and build upon. This is the vision. This is how we move to a world where we leverage the power of compounding momentum so that the ecosystem can run itself. Now, CRE is live today. If you're a developer, you can start building right now. Please go to our docs and you can start building. We also have a developer workshop at 3 o'clock upstairs on level 3, and we're running it tomorrow as well. We have some great lightning talks tomorrow on the Fulton Street stage as well. And if you're a financial institution, please contact us at enterprise.chain.link. We'd love to speak to you. We'd love to talk to you more about CRE. We'd love to run some developer workshops for you virtually or in your offices. Thank you, everyone.